Come on, microphone. Will you work for me? Are you gonna work for me? Yeah.
So you were in college when your family got their first car.
And that's how we ended up over there. They bought that house. They were buying.
So they bought a house brand new.
Yes.
5, 4.
Who knew that?
2,
Who knew that?
1.
Palm Love would come up, like University of Palm Love, for like, I know you all know it's Branch Normal and AM and N. All right, welcome to the Branch Normal Collection. My name is Christopher KP Brown. The KP stands for Cave and Pain. This week we're going to be interviewing Raina Edwards. Before we get into our interview with Raina, let's discuss our spotlight for this episode, episode 13. Episode 13 spotlight is E. Kitch Childs. E. Kitch Childs was a prominent clinical psychologist and advocate of gay and lesbian human rights. She worked to revise the American Psychological Association's attitude toward homosexuality. E. Kitch Childs was born on April 11, 1937 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her first name was Ellen, though she normally kept that a secret. Friends and colleagues called her Kitch. She was the youngest child in a family of older brothers, one of her older brothers being Kenny Clark, who was a jazz percussionist. Childs attended the University of Pittsburgh, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in science, focused on chemistry. She accomplished this in her early teenage years before going on to serve in the United States Navy. So she went to college early. She finished college in her teenage years. During her time in graduate school, she was listed as a folk singer. She was listed as folk singer E. Kitch Childs. She earned her master's and Ph.D. in human development at the University of Chicago. In 1969, while still a graduate student, she helped found the Association for Women in Psychology. She also helped to found the Women's Caucus of Chicago Gay Liberation, later renamed the Chicago Lesbian Liberation. In 1973, she moved to Oakland, California, and opened up her private practice. She practiced psychology in Oakland from 1973 to 1990. She used a slicing scale fee structure and provided free therapy sessions in communities that didn't have access to this service, with priority given to Black people, sex workers, people with AIDS, and people living in poverty. She focused her work towards battered women, survivors of sexual abuse, people with HIV/AIDS, prostitutes, and members of the LGBTQIA+ community. Later in life, she would live in Amsterdam, where she passed of natural causes on January 10, 1993. She was 55 years old. That same year, she was inducted into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Her last publication was a chapter entitled Therapy, Feminist Ethics, and the Community of Color, with particular emphasis on the treatment of Black women. This wraps up our spotlight on Dr. E. Kitch Childs. Remember, our spotlight serves only as an intro to the people we want you to learn more about in your own time. Please Google Dr. E. Kitch Childs to learn more about her life and work. Now, we're going to get into our interview with Raina Edwards. I'm too excited. Welcome, Raina Edwards, to the Branch Normal Collection.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Now, as I told you, I normally don't do this, but I want to read your full bio. Okay, full bio. So just sit tight for me. I haven't performed anything, so this is actually going to be the closest I've gotten to performing or anything. All right. So Raina Edwards is a 2017 graduate of Barry University's Mental Health Counseling Program. She's been licensed in the state of Florida since 2020, last year when all hell broke loose, with additional training in marriage and family therapy. It has fueled her passion for challenging generational trauma. Raina has had a variety of experiences, including working with children in foster care to adults struggling with substance abuse, misuse. Currently, she is pursuing her Ph.D. in counselor education in order to further provide support and advocacy for marginalized persons. She has a zeal working with the LGBTQ plus community and Black women. Raina's specialization is working with anxiety, depression, and trauma. In addition, she believes that creating a safe space for others allows them to see the power within themselves. All right. Yeah. So as I'm reading your bio, I'm thinking about the poetry community a lot, right? Just in the poetry community, we're dealing with a lot of these issues, or we're having these conversations, but a lot of times we don't have anybody who's licensed around, right, to like really get some, I don't know, trained, experience, like sound advice from. I'll say that. So I'll just start with what made you want to work in this field, or what even do you just get out of it working in this field?
I think the interesting thing is I've have friends who do a lot of different things, and that same sentiment is kind of there, that there aren't that many individuals who are in mental health or people of color in those spaces as well. I think for me, I've always been interested in like psychology, mental health, then getting a bachelor's in psychology, and I was like, I can't do anything with this degree like at all. And then it was like, all right, so what's next? Like, what can I do to actually make change, right? And it's like, what area I think I can show up in. And I realized that there aren't really that many Black women professionals in mental health, and how the stigma and everything is in our community. So I think that's kind of what it was how do I create a safe space for us to show up, realizing how much the system, like I use that term very broadly, but the systems in place isn't really geared to help us. And how do we navigate that? How do we break it down? How do we create a community around us for us to feel safe? And then not even just things that are happening in the news, but like these are the discrimination and biases and stereotypes and overt racist acts, or like things that we've known about for like hundreds of years. And how do we actually really make sure that we're making change? And for me, it's helping my people heal, helping my people feel a sense of like and safety, community, really community and healing, and breaking those generational change and breaking some of the things that prevent us from moving on in our life.
Got you. Obviously we've been in the middle of a pandemic for the last year, but are there any like themes that you see that you were surprised by, that you're seeing over and over, that you didn't realize was affecting us so much?
Surprise, not so much. Like my main job. So I have three things I'm doing. I am in private practice, and I don't, I do that. I also work at a homeless shelter for women.
Okay.
And it's interesting to see like the lack of life skills that people were taught, and which also facilitated them to being homeless, and like they're reoccurring. Like some of our individuals are coming back 2 or 3 times because they're not really learning those life skills in order for them to really get out and take care of themselves. And I think the pandemic is like, I equate it to the Mercury retrograde, where like it's a time where things are topsy-turvy, things are upside down. And yes, it's definitely challenging, but the thing is people see it as a negative thing, and it really highlights areas that you need to continue to grow in. And I think this pandemic has shown us as community, people as individuals, a nation, a world, areas that we really need to continue to do the work, advocacy, and grow in. So there's no theme that I'm personally surprised, and you do a lot. It'd be hard to really surprise me, honestly, nowadays. But again, I think it's just like the lack of the trauma that's coming up, and how that's also being passed down, and how that's coming up in people's ability to live independently. So yeah.
Now, when you say life skills, you mentioned a lack of life skills. What do you mean by that? Or what are life? Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Budgeting, honestly, for one, trying to get out of the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. I had one individual where I had to be like, okay, you make X amount of money a month. How much can you afford on rent? And it was almost their entire monthly amount. I was like, how do we make sure we think about other things that we have going on and bills and I don't know, saving so that we are making a realistic number for the amount of rent that we're able to pay. Keep in mind, I also live in South Florida. So I live in Miami. So it's like, yeah, Miami, but we have hurricanes. It's hurricane season. Like it's interesting how people don't learn hurricane preparation skills.
Literally got to be ready for a rainy day and right down there, right?
Yeah, it's like literally the hurricanes. You kind of get prior knowledge, but the fact that we could literally be locked inside of our apartments with no water, no food, unless we, prepare for it. So that's a thing for here as well. So again, it's like how to sew clothing, how to repair things, how to budget, how to make a healthy, well-balanced meal. Like some of those things kind of come up. The shelter I work at, like we do a lot of great things for the community. I think we could do a little bit more, but do a lot of great things. Like we provide free food. A lot of times it's organic, it's vegan. We have a hydroponic garden on site, but you'd be surprised at how many of our individual, like, I'm not eating that, that's disgusting, that's gross, and go to Burger King or McDonald's or whatever, instead of eating the food that, hey, that's free because you're homeless, you might want to save some money, and B, that's actually healthy for you. So those are the things I'm talking about, that we're not really being taught some of those things that get passed down.
Yeah, because when we say healthy, we're talking about body, of course, right? But also your mind. Your mind works differently. Like you can think more clearly when you're eating foods that are good for you as well.
Yep. Definitely.
And if you're thinking better, you can also put more of a mental power towards like, how am I going to save? How am I going to budget? You know what? I do need more than just what's going to cover rent. You know what I mean? Things like that. And so, no, that's real.
Mind, body, spirit thing kind of kicks in hardcore. Like if you're not nourishing your body, it's also impacting your thinking and your spiritual connection. If you're not nourishing your mental, it impacts your body and the spiritual. Like all those things are literally connected, and we don't really honor that, I think, as well as we need to.
No, that's real. What ages are you finding yourself working with most commonly?
So I am assigned 18 and up. It's a whole different system at work I was going to get into, but I work with 18 and up individuals, singles or, parents, moms.
Got you. Yeah, I work. So my full-time job right now is I work for an organization. We provide food and financial resources as well to food banks all across Philadelphia, Southern New Jersey region, Southeast Pennsylvania as well. And so it's interesting. So I know you work at a women's shelter, but it's interesting to me to see that it's like normally women and kids and like not really any guys around, right? And that's, yeah.
I mean, they're there, but so like we are a women's shelter. Like we specifically will only allow women or individuals of the LGBTQ community aligning with like non-binary but assigned female at birth, as well as trans men and women.
Okay.
So though we accept those as well, but men aren't in our spaces. And I think, and talking with like the director of like the whole agency, reason why she did that, reason why they did that was because we're realizing that women have a great job of, especially Black women, right, of being strong, looking good, and you will never know that we're struggling. So they wanted to create a space for women to come in who are actually struggling with homelessness, domestic violence, that sort of thing. Even though we may not be out on the streets sleeping on like the mattresses, we are still struggling and we need that. So that's why it's only women. And then we are the only all women shelter actually in South Florida.
Really? Are you
Yeah,
serious?
then there's shows that it's like women, there's co-ed ones, but we are the only one that's specifically designed just for women. Like it's
Wow.
pink everywhere. It's like pink.
Wow.
Like Kirby threw up in there. It's like pink everywhere. It's like Kirby threw up. It's pink everywhere in that place. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. So for you, why is it important to focus on Black women in the queer community?
Again, there's this we have this amazing ability to put on this face, to put on this mask of like, I got this. My things are together. I can navigate everything while we are hurting. And I think that gets passed down through generations of we have to be the strong woman and do with everything and nothing gets to us while we are crumbling on the inside and we are hurting. And keeping in mind, the cultural impact of like what we go through, like, intersectionality of being Black and being a woman. And how like there's your nuance, like things that we are dealing with from like the dominant culture as well as, within the Black community as well. So for me, focusing on like women who look like me, allows me to create a space for them to show up as authentically as they can. To be like, okay, I can let down my guard. I can take off this mask. I don't need to worry about teaching someone about cultural things. Understanding everyone has their own relationship to Blackness. That's perfectly okay. But like, you don't have to like teach someone so much because I've gone through it or I focus on that. Like being with someone, be like, girl, yes. And then they get it. And we're just in that moment of like, I'm like, we're just, and because we're in it and it's beautiful and we're talking and we're connecting. And we need that safe space for us to figure out what it looks like for us to feel safe and to deal with our own trauma and how to break generational curses and things that get passed down to our kids, right? And even in LGBTQ, as a queer woman, like it's important for me to also show up for my community. Realizing racism is still alive, especially in the LGBTQ community. And how do we create safe space for Black people who are of that community as well? I think like realizing pride, I get really passionate about this. So I'm just giving you a forewarning.
Yeah.
But like pride was started by queer women, right? But somehow it's been commercialized and it's being dominated by gay men, white gay men. So like it's important to make sure that's a safe space for us to show up as well and be authentic in our Blackness and in our queerness and however we show up, because we're not really kind of given that allowance in some of these spaces, even though like the gay mecca, Wilton Manors is like literally like 20-30 minute drive. I used to work actually there, which is like a big spot for a lot of gay people to move to and live in. But there's a lot of racism and discrimination that's in that space. So that's also why it's focusing on that as well.
Right. Now that makes sense. When you think about generational curses, like what do you like what's one problem or like cycle that you see that's like, yo, this is one of those things like we just gotta we gotta deal with, we gotta address, we gotta like, yeah.
Just one. Okay.
Maybe more than one if you want to.
I think the one that kind of comes into my mind, and this is also my own personal experience, is like this idea that women need to play second fiddle to men. And I know this is a whole controversial thing with like Kevin Samuels or whatever, but I think
it's free. It's your space. Like
I know, right? I'm like, what is like? Trust me, I show up in my space, right? And I think that start off with that one. That we are also taught that we have to be the strong women, but also kind of mute ourselves or dull ourselves down to allow other people to have that space to speak up for us. No, I'm going to take up space. I'm going to be loud and vivacious and like show up however I want to show up and however I feel like I need to show up. I don't believe that I need to mute my voice to make someone else comfortable. Do I believe I need to make sure I have a way of communicating that's also appropriate and respectful? Definitely. But I realized that like, and I've even had this issue in my doctorate program this past semester where I speak confidently and passionately and I was going off my multicultural stick and the teacher was like, you need to be mindful of how you speak and how harsh you come off to people. And I'm like, this heifer is tone policing me, is tone policing a Black woman because I'm passionate about something and I wasn't being offensive whatsoever. Oh, it was a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that. Like I handled it. I'm gonna put it that way. I'm going to take up space. I'm going to let you know how I feel and how you affronted me, right? And I don't think we give ourselves the allowance to do that, or we're worried about the outcome of that. So that's for me. Like, you're gonna see me, and this is me. I'm gonna be authentic, and I don't code switch as much as people would like me to do. I'm not doing that with you people.
Right. Yeah, and we're at a time. It seems like there was a big cultural shift. I won't even say cultural, but there was a big shift, obviously, last year. Hopefully, it's a shift for good and not like a momentary thing where, like, yeah, it was like, nah, this is my voice. This is going to be my voice, and I'm not holding back.
Mm-hmm.
I had a coworker, a Black woman, she might be mid-20s, something like that. When the George Floyd, the Derek Chauvin trial was taking place, like a little before the verdict, like the week of the verdict, my supervisor was like, we got to get prepared. This is the nature of our work. We had to get prepared for if there was protests, anything like that. And she was very honest. She was like, y'all might not hear from me. I might not be at work that day, depending on what news comes out. And I was like, oh, like that's extremely different from, say, 2012, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Trayvon Martin, which you had to deal with as well, because I think you were already in Florida around that time, right? And so, but there's been this like shift, right? Which has obviously been good for us and obviously, make things somewhat better, obviously, for Black women. It's like we haven't reached the mountaintop, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's good. It's been good to like see that change, starting to see that change.
Yeah, even with Simone Biles and her taking that second back, like, you know what, I'm not there right now. And I think that we need these examples of how we are allowed to take time, take space for ourselves, really, like take a step back and say, you know what, I'm not feeling it. Me and my homegirl, she's actually a social worker. We would say, we're having a Black day. And that was like our day, our little way of saying, like, what's happening in the news is making us raw and emotional. And it's just not really a day for us. I remember working, again, at an agency which was geared towards the marginalized. And it was that week of Philandra Castile and Alton Brown, like back to back. And I walked in just raw and just emotional and crying. And I really wish I had the confidence then to say now how I am now, that I just can't show up today. I just cannot be in that space because I was hurting and I wanted to show up for my clients. So at the same time, I was like, I need to show up for myself a little bit more. I sat in the back and I just cried. And one of my, white coworkers came up and said, oh, it's going to be okay. And I'm thinking, can I curse here? Is that okay?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I was thinking, how the fuck is this going to be okay when two of my people were killed for no reason?
Right.
And I'm like, and I can't say that because it's going to be like a thing, right? Here you go, Black women speaking up for herself. Like,
mm-hmm. Now we gotta have meetings now about what I said when I was just speaking. Right.
And the funny thing is, it took me crying in front of our clinical director for her to have like this town hall for all Black people who work at the agency to speak up, and that same coworker decided it was okay for him to speak up. No, have several seats. And people kept saying no, and he kept being like but. I was like, okay. That was also the same summer as Pulse. And that goes back to why it's important for Black LGBTQ spaces, because Pulse happened, everyone rallied. There was like a march. There was like coming together. We provide grief counseling and everything. But for Black folks, it was just like, oh, it sucks for you people. Oh, that happened in the news. I didn't know, right? So that's also why it's important for me to show up in these spaces and talk about that, because it's also something we don't talk about in the Black community. But yeah, little side.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's like it's been a lot of like, I guess, progress I'll say progress, use the word progress made in the last few years. But yeah, it's still like as a overall community, I still feel like we aren't having the conversations, right? Because the conversation isn't like what's on your Facebook timeline or what's on your personal Instagram timeline. It's literally like, no, what are your aunts and uncles saying? You know what I mean? What are our grandparents saying? Like, what are we saying, like, as a family, right? When we come together, is everybody out in our family, right? Like, are they out at the barbecue? They're out, right? When they're with their friends or whatever, but are they out in the family? You know what I'm saying? Like, can we accept that?
Right. Like I personally don't believe in coming out, so to speak. So with my family, it was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And it wasn't like a conversation. It wasn't like, hey, by the way, I think this is how I feel. It's like this is what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Period. Like I also acknowledge the privilege that my family is also really accepting, open. I have uncles and family members, whatever. So it's not really a thing. But it's like I don't believe that I have to come out to my family. I'm going to live my life, and you will see, and you will accept it. Like that's just how I am.
Right. No, that's real. Yeah, that's real. And I just think about the and this is not every family, but I just think about there's some families where it's like whispers, right? But never a direct conversation. And I'm just like, you know, just like this, just talk, you know what I'm saying? Talk to each other. Now, when you mentioned Simone Biles, one thing I think about with the Olympics and everything just taking place within the last couple of weeks, Simone has to deal with going to Tokyo and performing, which is not different from like 1992 Olympics or 96 Olympics, anything like that. But then when you factor in social media, right? Social media means like whatever happens in Tokyo, we know it in the United States the same day, probably within the same hour, right?
In the same minute, yeah.
In the same minute, you know what I mean? It's live. So she doesn't really get to like just have a moment to herself before addressing it here. Like and it came out that she lost her aunt, you know what I mean, during the Olympics as well, right? Which hasn't really been much of a conversation because we don't really care. Like we don't like as a society, we don't care that that's her reason for not. It's just like, oh, you need to go represent us, and like you are now like not a person, but our dream, our goal of what needs to happen. You know what I mean?
Right. No, like that reminds me of and I forgive me if I mess up this name, and I really don't mean to be disrespectful, but Shikari, right? Like, you know, she found out that her mom died by a reporter during an interview. The levels of just like the levels of disrespect, and like this is not a person to you, this is a news story. It's not someone's feelings. And I also wonder how being a Black woman played a part in that. Like, you know, I want to see her reaction. Like, oh, I'm going to break this news, and without actually honoring that, like, people have things that they need to get broken to, or narratives that need to be explained in a certain way. But like, you just do that. It's like you're literally putting someone in like this dog in this show. You're moving the pieces around to get this reaction because you don't see them as a human being. You see them as a puppet. And it's like so fucked up. I can like, it's messed up. It's just so many levels of like, I feel that pain. It was someone said that to me and how I would react to that. But it's like, dog, that's not okay.
This is where, I mean, this is a reminder of like all three Shikari, Simone Biles, and then there was another woman who runs track. Her last name is Irby, I believe. And she was in one of the mixed relay. So I don't know if you saw this, but the mixed relay, she like started at the wrong place, but it wasn't her fault. The officials put the tape in the wrong place, right? So when she gets past the baton, she's a little bit further up than she should be, which is whatever. Like they end up correcting it. They still race. They made it to the next round and all of that. But what happened, Black male reporter, right? First person to talk to her after the race, he's like, now, did you notice anything that seemed off a little bit about where you were standing? And she's like, no, you know, we'll look back at the tape and we'll see what happened. And he's like, well, but I mean, but did you not pay attention? Like, and he's just like really coming at her, like for real. Like he's coming at her. And it's like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, why? Like, there's no point in it. It's 4 people standing there, number one. It's her and her teammates, and he's just like locked in on her. You know what I'm saying? Ask all of them. Ask the women and the men that question, right? And just human to human, after you ask the question one time, and once you ask the question one time, you've done your job as a reporter, right? But now you have to like embarrass her.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, why that? And so there were moments, that moment in Sha'Carri in particular, I'm just like, no, like this is when we hear Black women say, yo, we're not protected, it's these moments too. You know what I mean? It's not always worst case scenario. It's these moments too. It's just everyday life. You know what I'm saying? Because I go with Sha'Carri, where's the coach? You know what I mean? Where's the barrier between me and a reporter for somebody I know who knows me well to tell me, hey, your mom passed? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same thing with Irby. It's like, where's the person to step in? Even the dude standing next to her in that moment, I'm like, bro, like you can stop the interview. You know what I mean? Hey, she already answered the question. Next question. You know what I mean? And so it's like these moments where it's clear. It's like, I say this because in order for things to improve, we have to move forward on what we're debating, right?
Yes.
So in 2021, we cannot still be debating like, are Black women protected or not? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like maybe in 2015 or before, like, all right, but that point has been proven. Like we see that over and over, right? And so I don't know. There's no question there. That's just like
no, I again, like I wholeheartedly agree with you. And this is like I wholeheartedly agree with you. And it's like, and it's those little microaggressions, the ways that shows up that says, hey, I'm not safe here. I'm not protected here. Or we use our voice and we're like, how dare you? And we're like hammered down. And it's like, I'm not doing this with you people anymore. Like, I'm tired of being hammered down into this little nub of, and then you wonder why we have these things that get passed down because you're not allowing us to be authentically ourselves. You're not allowing us. You have this idea of what a Black woman is supposed to look like, this aesthetic, this attitudes. And if you don't align with that, then there's something wrong with us. And it's like, no, you need to allow me to be whoever I am, however I show up and whatever it is. And it's just not a thing. It's like not a thing. And this even goes to like Sha'Carri, right? So I acknowledge I had a Facebook debate. It's not something I do very often, but I was like, I stand with her after the whole smoking thing. Like her mom passed, emotional turmoil. Again, I am a licensed mental health professional. I'm going to be empathetic and compassionate, right? Well, I'm going to be. Can't speak for everybody.
right.
And someone, it was a gay man, and I appreciate him using his voice. I definitely always value that. It was, well, I can't stand because she said X, Y, and Z. I think he said 6 years ago. I was like, 2015, nigga, she was 15 years old on Twitter. Just again, the statement was harsh and it was inappropriate and it was wrong and it was dangerous.
It's a teenager.
But she's 15.
Doesn't even count. Like it just does not count.
And again, it was one tweet. Again, it was not okay. At the same time, she's 15. And then they made a statement of, well, she shows a trend of homophobic. I'm like, one time is not a trend. Oh, she said X, Y, and D about Lil Nas X. I'm like, okay, well, what was that pertaining to? Oh, well, his sneaker, the Satan thing. I was just like, so nothing to do with him being gay. It's the whole religion, Christianity thing. So how is this a trend against the LGBTQ? How is it homophobic? And for a Black man, gay or not, to come at sister, it was like, can we not give her grace? Can we not give her compassion? Can we not say that as a child, you do not know any better, but because you haven't spoken out and done anything, like, okay, we'll give you that space and opportunity to be a better person. But like, we're always being like, and
and even I think she's like 21 now, 21, 22.
She's 21 now. It literally was 6 years ago, and she didn't know. Like,
no,
I would hate for my tweets, luckily they didn't have Twitter when I was that age. I am so thankful for that. But like, well, how much dumb stuff? Hey, you've known me for years.
Mhm.
How much dumb stuff have I done in general? That is like, Raina, you need to like stop. Right? Imagine that being on social media and being that on Twitter, me saying something like, we're dumb and we're young and we're learning ourselves and we're learning how to navigate the world. We're dealing with the misogyny and homophobia that's in our community. We're navigating that. We think that this is okay. But like, how do we allow someone to say, okay, now you're an adult, you know a little bit better, and we can't judge you with the sins of your past? Like, this whole cancel culture is just like disgusting to me.
It is because we throw away the entire person. Like, we cannot, like, if we start throwing away people, right, based off like, oh, they shouldn't have said that, they shouldn't have did that, everybody's going in the trash. We might as well go and let global warming take us all away. You know what I'm saying? If like,
I mean, I hear you, but there are some people who deserve to be in the trash. I'm just going to say that.
But here's my thing, right? There's a pattern with some people, right? There's a pattern even over their adult years.
That's my point.
R. Kelly, throw him away. Go ahead.
I didn't say it. I'm thinking it.
But it's like, if there's a pattern of, what are the words I want to use? If there's a pattern of not even just offending, if there's a pattern of hurting anybody inside our community, outside of the community, you know what I mean? Like, as much as I'm like pro-Black, you know, I'm not gonna let like some Black dude just like disrespect some white teenage girls or even some white teenage boys if they don't deserve it. Like, at least verbally, you know what I mean? Like, even if it's just verbal, like, yo, like, nah, they're not messing with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if somebody has a pattern of it, like, that's gotta be called out. Like, that has to be addressed. We can't give people a pass. If you're young, if it's something you said on Twitter, and if you can say even today, like, yo, I said that, shouldn't have said that, like, I would never say that today, I can hear that, right? I do think we have to always, like, at least give everybody one conversation, right? Right. It goes one conversation, and if you keep a pattern going, then like, okay, we ain't talking to you no more. Like, you are who you are. You know what I'm saying? And like, that's got to be dealt with differently. With your like, with the people you're assisting, clients, we don't use the word clients. We start using people that we serve. That's in my job. Yeah. So with the people you serve, how do you see them even trying to navigate through social media, and like, what are how do you see that impact them in the like somewhat, I don't know, how do you see that impact them?
We don't really have conversations about social media, actually. And I think that might be something I might kind of bring up. I think more often than not, there's other trauma that kind of comes up. Oh, my dad, my brother, this person, that kind of comes up more often than not. So I don't really have conversations about social media, but I think it might be something I might bring up during one of my groups, because I'm also in charge of our LGBTQ program at work. Like, I run the whole program. So maybe that might be a topic for one of the groups that we run, about like navigating social media, you know, harmful language, that sort of thing. That might be a good conversation to have.
I think about it because even in my own life, I see where it can be a disruption sometimes. Sometimes you can be on the path of like, man, I'm reading my books, I'm waking up drinking water, you know what I mean? I'm listening to NPR, just taking in good news. But then like, I can log in on Facebook and Instagram, and whatever the vibe is there can seep into me, you know what I mean? And like, really throw off my day, throw off my week, you know what I mean? And really have me on the like vibe that I really wasn't on and didn't want to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, social media is literally designed to be addictive. So like, even when you and I were planning this interview, I had some papers that I need to get done. I deleted my social media. I literally had to be like, I allow myself to get distracted, you know, I have ADHD, and allow myself to get distracted by social media. I was like, I have these things I need to focus on. I deleted everything. I deleted Twitter. I've been deleted Snapchat. I'm not even big on social media, which is a funny thing. I deleted my Facebook Messenger, Instagram. I did re-download Instagram because there was this party I wanted to go to, and I'm waiting for tickets to be dropped. But then I got the tickets, Carnival. Okay.
Right.
But I got the tickets, then I immediately deleted it again. Like I have it, but I've gotten way better at like dialing and checking out of it. Because honestly, I'm happier just like laying around watching my anime. Like I'm happier talking to my friends or like reconnecting or just honestly like my introvert side has been kicking in really heavy lately. I'm just happy being home alone by myself. But yeah, social media is designed to be addictive, and I think we just need to disconnect from it as much as we can to make sure we're preserving our own mental health. We also don't have control over the trauma that people put us through. Like I'm over trauma porn. I'm over people. Look at this black man being killed. And here's a whole video, and I'm putting it up there. I'm like, can we not share trauma porn? Can we not share more people of us dying and desensitizing us to that this is a normal, common thing, and it shouldn't be. It is common, shouldn't be normal. So even then, I'm very mindful, not even resharing those videos, but like it's just too much bombardment of stimulation, and it's like we don't need that.
Yeah, I was telling somebody, I'm still not sure if I watched the George Floyd video or not. You know what I mean? Sometimes you see snippets and you're not even trying to see anything. But I was telling somebody like last summer, I was like, yo, like imagine like going to a zoo, going to the lion's cage, putting a TV in front of the lion of people just killing lions. That's gonna like fuck that lion's head up. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's a lion. So like imagine what would happen to a human being. And I'm like, that can't be good for us. You know what I mean? Like that cannot be good for our brain. Like you want to stay aware, sure, but we do very much have. But that's the thing that like kind of creeped into social media as well. When social media, and I'm going to sound old when I say this, but when social media started, there was a limit on what type of videos been putting up, what kind of like images you're seeing and all of that. Now everything's fair game. Like I literally logged in Instagram one day, and this wasn't even police brutality. This somebody just shot somebody else. And it's just like, damn, like that's just here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing to see it in entertainment if I'm watching, like, I don't know, CSI or something like that, whatever. But, like, this happened in real life. These are real people. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Interesting that. So, like, speaking about this negativity, like, there is this really cute video of like these two identical plants in this museum. And they have these little kids say all these amazing, you're so beautiful, you're so green and luscious to one plant. And the other plant is like, you're disgusting, you're dirty, you're gross, right? You can literally see how the plants were growing with just that verbal onslaught of like positivity or negativity. And one's all luscious and green. The other one is literally, it's all shriveled and it's not growing and it's stunted and it's not doing so well. Like we're plants, like, even water, like literally there's like a thing where if you talk negatively or positive to water and you freeze it, you can see the ice crystals, form differently. Like they're all disfigured and gross in the negative one, and all like perfect shaped and nice and now pristine in the positive one. Like those are real things. And when we're getting this onslaught of like negative information, people dying or ways that Blackness is not accepted or honored or appropriate or whatever it is, it really does fuck with us on so many levels. Like if we're talking about molecules in water, it's fucking with our molecules too.
Right. You can't always see it, right? You can step into a room and like, oh, it feels weird in here. Like, you know what I mean? You can't see that energy, but you can feel it. You know what I mean? So yeah, like it affects
you. Yeah, I mean, like you asked that question before, and I'm not sure if I fully answered it about like what generational things and like my own experiences. Part of me is my own sense of Blackness. Like the fact that I am a Black woman with like short hair and it's blue hair, and I got like piercings and tattoos or whatever. My mom was like, "No, you're never going to get a job. You're not going to be accepted," right? And it had to be me being like, "I'm intelligent, I'm smart, I'm professional, I know my shit. I will get a job. I'll be fine. If they don't accept me, I accept myself and I'll create my own job." Right. So like that is a generational thing. that gets passed down of what we are allowed to look like or be or show up. You know, going natural in school and in undergrad, my parents were like, what are you gonna do with your hair? That's not okay. You're not gonna get a job, right? Those are the things that get passed down about like what blackness looks like and how we need to be acceptable or appropriate and navigate the white man's world. I just refuse to like navigate off of that. I mean, I still have work I need to do. I'm not done with that, but fuck that.
I think we're really, and I don't even. Sometimes I say we, but like I'm 37, so sometimes I feel in between. I feel in between like the people in their 50s and the people in their 20s, right? But I feel like what blackness is expanding. It is like we've been talking about freedom all these years, but now we're actually allowing each other to be free because we ourselves have put limits on what blackness is. Like, oh, you can't dye your hair. You know what I mean? You can't color your hair because you're not going to get a job. And the reality is, it's a bunch of people, you know, with color in their hair, right? So my part-time job, like my supervisor, her hair is blue right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and being like 37 and I'm from the South, right? Sometimes I'm a little conservative, right? I don't even say a little. Sometimes I'm conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know my brother called me out on it one day. He called me out on it in 2007. But, you know, I'm from the South, raised in a Christian family. You know what I mean? I was born in 84. But I see that changing though. So even last year, I had blonde hair for like, which was crazy, which is like wow to me. Like, and I felt safe doing it in a pandemic because I didn't have to go to work every day. You know what I mean? And one of my coworkers saw it recently. They were like, "Oh my God, you have blonde hair." It's like why is it not blonde now? And I was like, it was the same thing. Like I'm like, well, I literally cut it off because I was trying to get a job and I didn't want that holding me back. And so it's like it is like culture changing, and these like even I'm like fairly young, but even like it's these type of generational curses that like we pretty much all have to work on. The older people have to accept like, you know, the younger people are changing things. It's not that like they're just trying something, but like younger people are literally changing the workspace, right? Changing what it means to be professional.
Yeah.
You know, all of that. And so, and it for the older people, I'm like, yo, enjoy this freedom. Like it's a freedom you all actually never had, but actually wanted. My aunt talked about like, my aunt would always tell me like, and my aunt chopped cotton when she was a child, right? So my aunt would always say, growing up in the South as a Black woman, all I could ever be and imagine being was a secretary or a teacher, right? And she's like, you young people these days, like y'all can just like, y'all just do everything. You can do everything. Like you decide you don't want to go to work, you do your own thing, you know what I mean? And it was like, oh, that's crazy. Like that is like all of that happened within your lifetime, within like 50 years. You know what I'm saying? And so like, it's dope to see. I like to see that like what we define as Blackness is being like stretched out, being expanded, you know what I mean? And all of that. And like, we're allowing more and like promoting more, you know what I'm saying? Not limiting ourselves so much.
Exactly. I've been literally saying this for years is that our parents' generation or my parents' generation was really to get the foot in the door, you know, allowing us to show up, to come to these spaces, get the jobs, be in these schools, do those things, and allow us to be present, right? What we are doing is allowing ourselves to show up. We are actually truly allowing our authentic selves to show up in these spaces that our parents opened the door for. So I think that I appreciate them for being able to do that. And at the same time, they also need to say, like, you know what, we created the space for them to be themselves. And it looks like a short chick with like blue hair and like, you know, professional with crazy nail, like it shows up however it shows up.
And I'm doing my job well. Like my appearance, right? Visually, my appearance is neat, you know what I mean? Right? Still, like whatever colors you see, however I fashion it, my appearance was curated, right? It's neat. And I still know everything I know, even if I look like, you know, what professionalism looked like in 1985.
Yeah.
I still do my job well.
Right. I still show up and I'm able to have conversations with CEOs and owners of other local agencies and see my clients and be able to be fully present and engaged. And I will, no, not to be brag, I know my shit. Like, I think I'm actually really good at counseling. I know how to show up regardless of what I wear and what color my hair is. And I think the fact that I can do that, people are like, okay, she may look unorthodox, but she knows her stuff. I actually feel safe here and I can talk with her. And I even asked, was it like having a counselor who looks like me?
Mm.
Sometimes I get like, I wasn't sure at first. I get more so ageism than anything else actually, because like I look way younger than I really am. Not way younger. Well, yeah. I could pass for what, 24?
Yeah.
I'm 33.
I don't think many people are walking up to you like and thinking like 33.
No,
Yeah.
never. And I also don't really act like it most of the time. Like we literally bouncing around like dancing. So I'm okay with that. Like I'm really okay with that.
Because it goes back to what you said too. Even when we're talking about food, we're actually healthier than most like Black 30 somethings in, let's say, 1970s, right? Let me take that back. We're healthier than a lot of people. Like, there's more of a, I don't know. I'll just say like we have a higher expectancy of how long we plan to live and what value of life we plan to have, right? So I could talk about, Black people being healthy in the 70s, but they also had to deal with a different level of racism, which had to like put stress on them as well, which ages you as well. So,
Right.
yeah. And so, but I think there are reasons why we look younger and we hopefully will live longer as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also that kind of awareness of the food style we eat and how we navigate life. It's not like I haven't been under stress. And I think, and it's interesting that I recently owned into my identity as who I am is a full vibe. Like I'm a vibe. I show up and it's me, and it's always been like, I've always been authentically me, even when I've had a lot of pushback for it. I've conformed a little bit, but I've, worked towards being like, I've been myself. And I think that the fact that we have this idea, this box of who we are expected to be, supposed to be, that in itself causes the sense of stress that shows up in just how we look, right? When we are happy with ourselves and living ourselves more authentically, being a whole vibe, a whole mood, a whole fucking mood, I think it allows me to feel and I like to look better because I'm not so like the weight of everyone else's expectations are saying is who I need to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with you. You've lived I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Like knowing you for how long have you known each other? 2006?
Yeah, 2005. Because you're around when the album comes out.
It was 6. Because I graduated from high school in 06.
Oh, okay. Oh, so okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was right before winter break, maybe. I don't know. But like we've known just for forever, and seeing you show up and going to the different poetry things and like how you moved and like all those things because you're following your passion, like living your life authentically for you allows you to just look and feel better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel good. Even what you were talking about, like whatever you feel inside, you kind of like people can tell that from the outside, right? And I remember just getting out of this like crazy relationship a few years ago, and somebody was just like, "You look good." Like what's up? Like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, I didn't go into like a whole lot of detail. I knew myself that like the change it made, and I knew how I felt just waking up in the morning, getting out of bed. Yeah. I knew how like I could get back into my like old self in a way. But yeah. So, but thinking about that though, you can tell me like personal practices or just things you encourage people you serve to do, right? We talked about food a little bit, but what are like some just regular day-to-day things you would encourage people to do, to like keep a good sense of self, to kind of stay centered and all of that?
Honestly, the biggest thing is breathing. And I think that's something that I've had to remind myself as well. But it's really sometimes we don't realize just the power of oxygen into our body and into our brains. And I don't know if anyone's experienced this, but when we get so anxious or wound up or angry, we realize that we're not really breathing as well as we need to. Like, we're not going to die, obviously, but we just feel really constricted.
But the shoulders are up here, like instead of like relax.
Right. And then like I've talked to people, and y'all can tell I speak fast, right? And they're just going a mile a minute, and then they gotta stop and and they gotta keep going. It's like the fact that you have to take that big of a breath to it's like, let's take a second. Let's do a quick breathing exercise. Take one big deep breath in. I have my little my so there's one I actually like is 478, only because it's Macon, Georgia's area code. Like,
right, true. Shout out to
so
Macon.
it's really like, it's like you breathe in for 4 for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 7, and you breathe out for a count of 8. That's it. And you do it as many times as you need to. Again, it's a 478 nostalgia, heart making.
Breathe in for the count of 4.
So you breathe in for a count of 4, and then you hold it for a count of 7, and then you breathe out with a count of 8.
Nice. Gotcha.
I like to say that, like, you breathe in with your nose, hold it out with your mouth. Another one I actually really like is square breathing, where you're breathing in with your nose for 4, holding it for 4, out with your nose for 4, holding that for 4, and then doing it 4 times. But I do find that like really helpful, because you're making sure you're breathing, and you're also thinking, you're being very intentional about counting and your breath and everything. So you're disconnecting from like what's happening around you and the anxiety and anger or whatever it is, and you are connecting to breathing and your breath and the counting and how your body feels in those moments, right? So I really do love those. I think also journaling is really helpful. Even if you do it like sporadically, just getting something out, I think it's helpful. And something that I also work with my people that I serve is understanding how you feel. We confuse thoughts and feelings so often that it's like, oh, well, I feel that so-and-so doesn't like me. That's a thought. You're feeling it's anger, sadness, hurt, disappointment, happiness, surprise. Those are your feelings. And when we are able to better identify our feelings, so we can think, so why am I feeling this way? I always like to phrase it is, what is this feeling telling you? That's how I kind of prefer to phrase it. But it's like, well, why am I feeling this way? What is this feeling telling me? And then when you're able to like understand that, you can dig more deeply and like, oh, okay, so is this really something that's real? Or am I just feeling it and that's how I'm navigating?
Right. No, that's real. Because we can really, and I know this from being around poets and being a poet, you can really be in your head about something and like really write out a whole narrative in your head about this is how a person feels about me, or this is what happened in that space. You know what I'm saying? And it's not always nothing, but quite often it's more than what actually was happening.
And it allows you to really challenge those thoughts and be like, is this really helpful for me? Like, how do I know? My favorite part is, how do I know this is true? What literal facts have been presented in front of you that supports this thought that you have in your head? None? Oh, okay. Oh, you have facts? Then cool. Go with it. Go with it, fam. Go with it. Like, it allows you to really take a step back and like, how is this really a thing that is happening? And I need to like do like, and so like when I journal, I try to journal circling around like, what am I feeling? What's contributing to that feeling? How that's impacting my thoughts and everything. And that helps me figure out what I want to do next. And it really just like kind of getting it out and having a safe space for me, it's helpful. That's what I do. Of course, I always encourage people to go to therapy, it's helpful, right? Having that safe space is helpful. I think for me, I'm not opposed to it. I've actually had counselors in the past and they have been helpful for me, as I have a pretty good support system and I have journaling. So I'm good with where I'm at right now. but I'm definitely open to having a counselor. I don't think anyone's immune to it, or even this idea that you have to be ill or sick or have trauma or have something crazy going on. Like, no, you could just like realize there's something in life that's not quite serving you, and how do you like make sure you navigate that, you know?
Right. I was watching Queen Sugar. I don't know if you watch Queen Sugar, but
Yes. Nola looks just like me.
oh shoot.
See it?
That's crazy. Yes. I wouldn't like I never thought
No,
about
so she used to be on True Blood. I can't remember her name, or sort of the R. She used to be on True Blood, and people stopped me in Atlanta. It was like, "Oh, that girl from True Blood." I was like, "No, that's not me." I literally gotten stopped and asked the question. I'm like, "She's tall, I'm short. That's not me."
That's funny. That's
Yeah.
funny. So yeah, so when the first season comes, I remember watching the first episode of Queen Sugar when it was a like brand new show. And like literally, as soon as the episode went off, I had to like get my laptop and I searched Black therapists in Philly. Cause it just like it opened up some floodgates for me. And it was like stuff is like, oh shoot, I didn't even realize like these things were bothering me. And so I started the process of looking for a therapist, which was actually really difficult for me, or felt difficult, I would say, right? Between like, you know, I don't think I had insurance at the time, thinking about how much it would cost in general, trying to find somebody. I found the therapist. I found 3 therapists, had 2 not call me back or email me back, right? Had one schedule me and then like not follow up or whatever. That didn't go through. So it was really like 2 or 3 years, but I did start. I actually had like 8 months of therapy before the pandemic. Thank God. Like my therapist actually, her husband passed while I was in therapy, which was actually like pretty crazy because she ends up reminding me of my mom, and like, cause she had a little boy and all of that. And I was in therapy for a lot of issues based around like my relationship with my mother and things that happened with my mom. And so, but I did that like 8 months, and like game changer, like in a way that like money couldn't change my life, in a way that like poetry couldn't change my life, a job, a relationship, any of those things. And who was I talking to? Oh, I interviewed my friend Jalila, who lives in Thailand. Interviewed her yesterday, and she was just like, and she travels, right? So she has a travel blog, and she was like, you know, you can travel all you want to, but whatever you need to address within yourself, you got to address that. Like, you know, you're not going to escape it by going to the other side of the planet. You know what I mean? Like, you have to deal with that. But I started therapy then. I know I had one of my friends actually was going to the same therapist at the time, and my roommate was going through he was in the same program, right? So we were in a program called Black Men Heal, which is a really dope program in Philly.
Yeah. So like, yeah, exactly. So no matter where you are, there you are, right? You can't only run for so far before your same behaviors and things catch up to you. Like, you wonder why you're doing the same thing because you're running for something, right? Actually, for a stint of time, I actually worked with a local organization based here in Florida called Dream Defenders, and they actually provided free counseling to members of the community. So it was free for them, for the people who showed up. I, got paid a little bit, but I was actually volunteering initially. And then I was like, listen, y'all only got to pay me. All right. But I was literally just volunteering my time, having clients, because, for free, to make sure that they were getting the care that I need, even in my own practice. So I had my own practice, and I recently joined a group practice. So my own practice, I'm dirt cheap and it comes down to counseling. When my group practice, we're charging like the actual amount. Like, I can literally charge $150 an hour just for my rates out of pocket, right? My group, my individual, my own private practice, my own thing, the most I charged was $50 a session. And that was initially so I could service mainly people of color, right? Mainly women. And I also understand like there's this donut hole that people kind of ignore about like services. If you have a lot of money, you have really good insurance and everything's free. If you don't have a lot of money, you get decent insurance and things are free. Not be great, but it's still free. All right. And then there's this donut hole of like, wow, you may have insurance, but you're still paying $65 a session for a counselor, and you really can't afford that with your salary. So that's why I chose to do that. For those who didn't have insurance and wasn't trying to go to a community organization, I used to work for them. They're not terrible, but you're also getting 50 people on your caseload. It could be a lot for them. And sometimes even entry level where like they're still learning and practicing. And I've been doing this for like 5 years. I've been doing this for a minute. So I wanted to make sure that I'm helping out the community. Interesting, actually did get a lot of individuals who actually were working on the streets, like doing the activist work and organizing and planning, and they were actually a part of the program and working with me. And it was great working with them and helping them and everything. But yeah, no, I get it. It's like you need to do the work, finding some money. Just to like plug, I'm sure you're gonna put my Instagram handle down there too. I'm not very Instagram savvy. I don't really deal with Instagram. But if you message me, I'll get it. And if you want help, I have a list of resources actually that I found that has counselors, Black counselors, counselors of color across the states.
Oh, nice.
And it's a registry you can sign up for, you can look for. So if anyone's interested, please feel free to reach out. Even if you want some information about what to look for in a counselor, I'm okay having a conversation if I'm not too busy. Acknowledging I am in the PhD program with a full-time job in a private practice. So yeah.
Right. It's time. Like
I would love to give you my time, just also honor the fact that I need to take care of myself, right?
Exactly. Like you gotta start with yourself. An idea I just want to throw out there just because it came up in a conversation recently. Our family members who are in prison need therapy.
I mean, so they actually have a counselor? They should have a counselor that's actually in the prisons. The system, that's a whole other soapbox thing, but there should be someone in there providing care. If the care is adequate, I don't know. If it's good, I don't know. I can't speak to it. Prisons are private. They don't really care. It's really slavery.
That's what, yeah. So, and that's what I'm saying, like not depending, and I say our family members because we can't really, all right, so if we talk about police brutality, we talk about a system that we don't trust, right? And prisons are part of the same exact system. This is all part of the justice system, right? So if we know the system's not for us, what do we do for ourselves, right? And so, do we, obviously, we should just, be helping. I don't know. And I don't even want to sound like a hypocrite. I mean, I have a family member that I know I don't do enough for who is in prison, my cousin, right? I know that for 100%, you know what I'm saying? And there's a guilt that comes with that. But that doesn't stop me from throwing out ideas, right? So just like, if we can have if we provided therapy and paid for therapy for our family members who are incarcerated, and also for when they're coming out, because that seems to be the hardest part, right? Coming back into regular society, you know what I mean? And regular society is different. People dressing different, cultures change, all these things.
Technology is different.
What's that?
Technology is also very different.
Right. This is gonna sound random, but Boosie was in prison when Instagram came out, and I can tell. Traditionally I was a Boosie fan, and I'd be like, man, I wish he would just be quiet. You know what I'm saying? But he was in prison at a certain time, and he came out, and the world had changed. You know what I mean? He, in my opinion, he never necessarily caught up with it.
That's actually a really interesting point. We all have stages of development, and he missed out on learning how to navigate social media appropriately, which is why I think a lot of the older people kind of social media wrong a little bit, because it's you're seeing what these young little things are doing, but you really didn't learn some of this. You don't
what's the
etiquette? All your business,
right?
And I think also the younger generation just so used to being on it, it's a second life or whatever. But off topic, but yeah. It's interesting.
I
I am all for any way that's going to help the community, right? So wherever that looks like, however it looks like, I'm definitely, team for it, right? I think the issue is the fact that our prison system is geared for punishment and not rehabilitation.
Yeah.
That prison system is literally geared to have as many, mainly Black people in the prisons and get money from the government for being in the prisons so they can work for like 5 cents an hour to make Victoria's Secret underwear. Right. Why do they care about Black people? Again, most of the people in the prisons are Black men, right? Really because of marijuana. Not soapbox, stop it. But it's not it's not geared to
while
really
there's
help
CBD
us.
stores on every block now, you know what I mean?
The fact that we consume so many things that come from prisons, right? Whole Foods, McDonald's, Walmart, fucking Victoria's Secret, like a lot of these things. I don't know if you remember like years ago, like they were paying firefighters who were trained, who were in prison, right? They were in prison and were trained to be firefighters. We're paying them like $100.
Oh my God.
$1 like an hour to fight fires. How fucking dangerous is that? Or $1.50 or something, right? Like
slavery by another name.
There's layers of what is fucked up with the system, between being inside how prior prisons are set up, being inside and what they do to the prisoners that are there, the lack of rehabilitation and more so punishment. Like you are criminals, even though like this is literally like the 13th Amendment about slavery, like that all over again. And then you get out and the stigma of like, you're a criminal, you've done something wrong, even though you were probably just in prison for like, I don't know, smoking weed 3 times and got caught for it, which is also kind of a cultural norm for us, right? It's like the layers to it. And now you can't get a job because you have maybe 1 felony or 2. So you do what you can to get a job, or you're relaxing by smoking or whatever. Now you're back into prison and no one fucking cares. This is why also restorative justice is also really important, because it allows the community to see the person more than just a criminal, as an actual human being who's like gone through life and how he's impacted or they've impacted others. I did an actual presentation. I'm really impressive. I did a presentation on restorative justice, like when I was in my master's program.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that I think, yeah, I've done a lot of cool things.
All right, we're going to talk about your master's program. All right, so where did you get your master's?
Barry University, Miami, Florida. Yeah, I'm an alum. I'm back at the school I got my master's from.
Okay, got you. Now I'll do this out of order a little bit, all right, I'll just ask a question. Walk me through the years. All right, so one focus of Branch Normal Collection is to be very transparent about what the timeline looks like for people after high school, right? So what we often teach is like, you do well in high school, you go to college for 4 years. If you want to get your master's, you get your master's right after that 4 years. If you want your Ph.D., it happens right after the master's. And then you have this amazing job, right? Wrong. So like, and it happens for some people. That does.
It does.
And so Branch Normal is about like, no, what's the actual timeline? So walk me through, we're going to talk about college a little bit, but walk me through graduating from college to now.
So graduated from college in 06, right? I am from Rochester. What?
Oh, what do you mean you graduated in 06?
Yes. Well, I mean, high school. Sorry, high school.
Okay.
High school. Lo siento. So I graduated from high school in 06. I'm from Rochester, New York. And then I was like, I refuse to stay in the cold. Fuck this. So I ended up going to Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, 478. Don't forget, breathe, right?
Word.
If you don't remember one thing, 478, breathe, right? And yeah, no, actually it took me, people don't know this. I actually did an extra semester at Mercer. So I left Macon in like 2011. Does math, what is that? I think like December 2011, maybe something like that. I think.
That makes sense. That adds up.
Cool, because me and math, not really a thing. I don't know timelines, right? And then I actually had one more class I needed to do. So I left Macon and left Georgia and went back to New York, having one class I still needed to do. So it took me another like 6 months or so to finish that one class that I took, and that was in Rochester, for me to get my bachelor's in psychology. People don't know this.
I don't think
right?
I knew that. I don't think I knew that.
No, I don't tell people this. Like, hey, it's my business. But it's honestly, I was ashamed. I was like, I did all of this work. I went through all of this. Like, there was literally a point where I had 4 jobs while also like being in school. Like, it was, I had a pretty difficult time in school, Chris.
Yeah, I do. This is why I asked, because like there is a shame. Like, so I have several friends. I have friends who didn't finish college at all. I have friends who like took years like in between or whatever. And the reason I always ask is because like the more we talk about it, the less shame I hope is attached to it, right? Because these are really our stories. Like, and throughout these processes, like people are learning. It's not like, oh, I didn't learn nothing. You know what I mean? Like you were learning, and it just wasn't on necessarily like this particular like systems timeline, right? And so
yeah, exactly. I had this whole like timeline of this in my life, and I'm gonna get done my bachelor's, I'm gonna get a good job, and it's just like didn't work out. So I had an extra semester of the undergrad, and then went back to New York. I had to take one class, did that class, got my bachelor's. I was like, woo, I actually did this, right? I was so proud of myself. And it's like my sense of self was also so wound into my academic life and my career. I don't think that I'm unattractive, but like my mom's always hammered in, you need to have education, and that linked hardcore to my sense of self. So I was feeling really low self-esteem, like not having the degree, right? So I got that done, and I was like, all right, so I can't do anything with a degree in psychology, a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in African American studies. So what's next? And I was like, I refuse to stay in Rochester. Fuck the cold, right? So I only applied to like 2 schools, and I got into Barry, and I think I moved down to Barry in 2013. Yeah, 2013. That's the same summer as Trayvon Martin, because I remember my dad and I came down for 4th of July weekend with that time to actually look for a place for me to move to. And I think where we're flying back is when I actually remember seeing the verdict on the TV and just being pissed at the airport, flying back to New York with my dad. So I moved to Miami, Florida on my own in August of 2013. My dad and I drove down. He helped me move into my place. We bought a bed, a couple of, cooking stuff. The very next morning, his plane left at 7:00 in the morning. So I had to literally figure everything out. I had to figure out how to get to school, how to figure out how to find a job, but I didn't have a job. I had to figure everything out. Friends, definitely had some anxiety and depression during that time, because I literally moved to a whole new state
where you don't know anybody.
Nobody, right? Nobody. Found friends in school. I have a good friend now. Like, she just can't quit me. Like, she just cannot. And I'm really thankful for that. But so you moved around in Florida. It was like in South Florida.
Right. Not to interrupt you or cut you off. I just think this key. How long did you think that friendship took to form? That might be a random ass question, but
no, it's actually like a valid ass question. Like with me, like I've gone through some things, which and my sense of trust, especially with women, was definitely deteriorated. So like it took me honestly a few years to me to actually fully accept that friendship, because we had this thing where she really made me upset, and I like ghosted her. And she would not leave me alone. And then eventually I forgot what happened, but she like not yelled at me, but she was like, dude, what's going on? Why aren't you? And I, talked to her, and she was like, if you are bothered by something, you got to communicate with me. And I was like, that's valid. But that was like a couple of years or so into us being friends, because I just like had a hard time with what my previous experiences were. But she claims we started in 2013. I don't know. Florida is a time black hole. If anyone's ever been here for more than like 4 months, like, and at least in Georgia, you have like, oh, the leaves are changing colors. Nothing changes down here.
Oh, yeah. No, I get that.
You really cannot gauge what's happening and when, because it's like, oh, consistent time. And maybe like, oh, it might be a little bit rainy, but like,
there's no like snowstorm. Oh, that was a snowstorm in 2009. Like, none of that is happening.
Nothing. I can't remember nothing. Right. I can't remember. Like, I remember I went to Fort Valley because during homecoming, because X, Y, and Z, or it was cold outside, it was freezing, and like, nope, not Florida.
Right.
So I think I claim 2014 as friends.
Okay.
Maybe 15. I say 14. Let's say 14.
Okay.
And
so.
Yes, say 14. We were thinking about this. Yeah.
So what? Yeah. So you go down in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
You immediately start master's program.
Yep. That's why I came down. I had a little bit of money saved up. I took out a loan, and I got a place and immediately started school. I think a week later, after exploring a little bit, and then started looking for a job.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Okay. How do we get to? So what happens between 2013 and I guess 2018? I guess.
Okay. That's a good question. I've been working full time for the most part. I think I had like a summer where I had to quit my job to focus on school. So I was full-time student, full-time employee, and I think I graduated. So my school also messed me up, right? So they have a dual program. They have a mental health counseling and marriage and family therapy dual track. I thought I was on the dual track. Turns out I wasn't, but they thought I was on the dual track. So they had me do an extra semester of school because my hours weren't done for this other track that I wasn't on.
Got you.
Right. And then I had to also be on my advisor to do the graduation paperwork, which he didn't do, and he did it late. So I didn't fully graduate until March of 2017, even though I walked in May, June of 2016.
Now, I have to share this with you because that's like, yeah, I'm looking at your face and it's like, it's the like we talk about prison, right? We talk about that system, we talk about justice system, school is another system, right? And it doesn't always go smoothly, not always because of us. Sometimes it's on the administration side as well. So I had I actually was starting, this is 2019, I think. Yeah, early 2019. I decided like, hey, I want to go get my master's in something. I said I'm going to do physical therapy or occupational therapy. And so I enrolled in an occupational therapy program. I'm ordering books. I registered for classes and all of that. Had my financial aid, figured out all of that. And like a few weeks into classes, they're like, oh, like you don't even need this class that we told you that you need, right? Mm-hmm. Which seems like whatever, because it's one class. I was working full time and doing going to do the master's program as well. So that means 2 or 3 classes per semester, right? So the fact that I didn't need that one class made me ineligible for any financial aid, which means now you owe us thousands of dollars out of nowhere. And I'm a substitute teacher at the time. Like, you know what I mean? I'm broke, you know what I'm saying? And like, the reason I'm going back to school is because I need a better career to like make more money. And so it's like, I end up just leaving the program completely. And now it's like, 2 years later? And like, I'm thinking about maybe going back. But, like, that's just a mistake. You know what I mean? That sometimes people just get completely discouraged by the mistakes that happen, even on the administration side. Or you feel like, I'm making this step. I've I've convinced myself to go back. I enrolled. I, went to orientation, all these things. And then you feel like, oh, like, dang, like, was it meant to be? Because this thing happened. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yours was the beginning. Mine was at the very end. So, like, I definitely feel, no, I probably would stay in the program. I'm not gonna lie. Like I upgraded my entire life. Again, my sense of self was so rooted in my academic career and like these accolades that like I had no other option but like just deal with it and navigate through. So yeah, so that was a thing, right? And then like so not being fully graduated, I really couldn't find a really good job or be a registered intern in Florida. I luckily I had my transcript that says that I was done. I just really couldn't find a really good job until like that March, and I got my actual diploma. And how it works in I think most states, once you have your diploma, you become a registered intern, and that's when you are working towards being licensed. You're entering the state. It took me literally like 9 months to be a registered intern because I started application thinking I was done and then kept sending them their transcripts and everything that was done. And it took me calling back and resending stuff. And then I did actually get a job and the supervisor was like, oh, I know someone who works there or something, and made a phone call. And like the next week, I actually was like, okay, now you're officially a registered intern, right? Wow. So I should have actually been licensed at least 6 months earlier than I actually really was licensed. It happens, right? I think these things that happen kind of not show your dedication, but for me, show me like I don't believe I have any option but just to do it. I can't quit. I think if someone wants to take the seat back and take the break, it was just right for them. Cool. For me, I couldn't. I just don't have an option. Like for me, what do I do? Quit everything, go back to New York? No, it's cold. Like you never had to leave your house an hour before work to take off snow this high off your car? No.
Right.
No, thank you. Right. I'm not a snow person. I was born in Philly. I don't do snow.
I always
Philly. I was born in Philly. I'm not from Philly. I was born in Philly. Different.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I'm not Canadian either.
You're almost Canadian. You're so
I'm not. I'm not.
Rochester, New York is like you can see Toronto. You can wave at Drake from Rochester.
That's besides the point. It's still the United States, okay? You can literally see across Lake Ontario. I've done it before on both sides. It's actually really cool.
Wow. No, that's dope. I'm messing with you, but I have to say this though. I'm like really proud of you for getting over those hurdles, right? Because even with the snow, right, when you're away from home, when you're far away from states, hours away, there is in the back of your head, like I could just pack it up and go home if it really came down to it. You know what I'm saying? Like you may not want to, but you do know that's an option at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
For me, that's failure.
But that's what I was gonna say. It really gets into what do you want? You know what I mean? What is the level of like, I can't live with this if I made this decision. You know what I'm saying? What's just gonna nag me for the rest of my life if I made this decision? And that's what I think people have to ask themselves. It's not really about like, for me, I left grad school because it was gonna nag me to not do poetry at that time. I would have been, even at 37, I probably wouldn't even be in good health right now thinking about, should I have left when I was 24? And like, what would that have looked like? And so I think people have these moments where you have to like push everybody else's thoughts aside, whatever family's saying, whatever friends saying, professors, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever job, we got a job for you back here, like whatever's going on, and say like, what do I need for myself that I'm going to be happy with myself in the future?
Yep. Exactly. An interesting thing, I've had people, no one close to me, honestly, even discourage me getting into a PhD program. It's a waste and you don't really need it. Okay, maybe for you, but for me, I do feel like I need it. It's interesting how much I've grown while just being in this program. But I feel like I'm hopping ahead. So yeah, got done with school. took me extra time, just like the undergrad. So that was a thing that I had to navigate and deal with. Came a registered intern,
Yeah.
and you also had to pay for supervision unless you get one free through your job. I didn't have the opportunity at first to go through my jobs. I had to pay for it. So that's in one more bill. Like, let's also talk about how the system is also very gatekeepy about, like, you got to pay for your registered internship. You got to pay for supervision as you get it free through your job. You got to pay for the licensure exam. And if you don't pass it, you got to pay for it again. I didn't pass it the first time. I had to take it again, right? So you have to pay for the licensure application. And there's also like a processing fee or something like, or the actual license. If you need additional documentation, you got to pay for that. Every 2 years, you got to pay to be relicensed, with also doing on top of that, like classes or continuing education units. Like, it's very gatekeeping. If you can't afford it, you can't do it. Right. And like my job doesn't require it, but unless you're a registered intern, you're not going to get hired. And then they're like, oh, how long do you need for your license? Right. So me being licensed, they were like, yes, we want you. So yeah, it's very gatekeeping as far as how much, the money that goes into it and being able to afford all of that whole process. Like, I paid my supervisor, I wasn't paying him for a while because I was kind of poor. Then I got I think I got my Ph.D. I started school and got like my refund. Now I was like, here's the money that I owe you that I didn't pay you for like a year. And that was around like $700. And that was after I still discontinued with him and got free supervision through my job. And that was subpar supervision. Subpar supervision. By then I was like, I don't need this. It was free, but like it was all administrative stuff, and it was all like the cultural biases stuff. Like, you don't understand what like being a Black woman, but like, oh, I'm from a white city, but I went to work in a prison, so now I know about Blackness.
Right.
Yeah, we had beef. We did not get along, and she was also the CEO. We did not get along. I was okay with that. Like, I'm not doing this with you people. Yeah, so like that was getting free supervision there, and I was just getting it for the hours, just so I can say I met with somebody for an hour to be, licensed.
Got you.
Yeah, and that was a person who was discouraging me, and for the other people about getting a PhD. Oh, you don't really need it. I think it's just like it's a lot of money for just title behind your name, yada yada yada. And it's like, because you doesn't want to do it doesn't mean I shouldn't.
It's like, I don't trust you though. Like, somebody else could say it and it might hold some more weight, but you in particular, like, nah, you're not. This means nothing to me coming from you.
Nothing. Like, your opinion literally means nothing to me. I left that job. I was unemployed. We said up to 2018. What happened? I think I had a PSR. I was doing group therapy, and then I went and found like a job that was better benefits, yada yada yada. Was there for over a year, and then the pandemic hit, and I lost that job. And by then I was saving. So I was like, I'm gonna start my own practice. I'm gonna do this and then be on my own. And then my friend that I referenced earlier, she was like, my job is hiring. Apply to my job. So the day I lost my job, I applied to one job, had an interview the next week. The week after that, I got an offer letter.
Wow.
I'm impressive. Like,
during the pandemic, right?
During the pandemic. Wow. And it's in person too. But I mean, like, come on, I'm also pretty impressive. So like, you see how humble I am, right? Yeah.
Your New York comes out sometimes.
Whatever. But keeping in mind, why do we also need to sit here and downplay our accomplishments and say that we're not special when we really are? So
hey, now this is real. This is real.
Right. We literally go into job interviews to hype ourselves up, but we got turned off when we leave. I'm sorry. I've done a lot of great things in my life. Why do I need to be like downplay the amazing things and amazing person that I am? I'm always not shoving you in the face with it.
No, this is real, because we end up getting paid less for this reason, right? So we go into our jobs. We're very humble we're really humble, and we're kind of like, I'll say this and nobody has to agree with it. But because we're the Black employer, because we're Black, we're happy to have the job and happy to be accepted in the space of the job, right? But the reality is we've worked so much harder to get this job that we're more qualified than other people who have it and may possibly be getting more than we are. So yeah, there's a downside to like us being humble when we're in these workspaces, because at the end of the day, everybody's working for the money. You know what I mean? If not, you can volunteer, or you can, like you're doing in your personal practice, you can offer lower fees to meet people halfway. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, we all got the same bills, and we as Black people have a financial gap to overcome already. You know what I'm
Thank
saying?
you.
And so we should, yeah. No,
Thank
it's something to say
you.
about like being proud of your accomplishment and like saying like, nah, I know how to do this whole thing. I don't need anybody to help me. Like, I actually have a lot of experience doing this. So in my job, right, I'm working in events, and I have coworkers who haven't been working in events as long. I mean, I've been planning and organizing events since I was in high school in some
Mm-hmm.
capacity. You know what I mean? And in college, I was promoting events and bringing people down from college to downtown and selling out shows. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? Setting records in those spaces. Like, you know what I'm saying? And even before I had this job, like I'm doing poetry events where I'm booking the artists, promoting, thinking about the budget, you know what I mean? Talking to the venue owners, things like that, making the crowd happy, like a whole line of things. And so when I get to my job, now I'm not surprised by the level of work I provide, even though my coworkers are sometimes, right? And it's just like, no, I know I have this experience, but I have been humble at my job and I haven't talked about all the things I've done. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like, we don't have to leave our accomplishments at the door. You know what I mean? We actually end up suffering a lot of times when we do.
Exactly. And then also, isn't this space also to talk about like the struggles that I've gone through and how that wasn't a hindrance to some of the things that I'm doing? So let's not hype up like the things that I've done. Like I've done a lot. I've just definitely a whole lot more that I can do. But if this space is to show how obstacles don't make you fail or don't really get in the way of you making something beautiful, why not talk about the things that are being made out of all of that, right? So,
No, that's real. That's real. That's major key.
right. Again, that's like, I really do my best to try and embody the things I want people to like be. Like, if I want you to show up, I'm going to do my best to show up for me.
Right.
If I'm talking to my clients, my people that I serve, and like, listen, sis, you need to speak up for yourself. You need to be out there. I need to do the exact same thing. I need to also model that behavior when I'm teaching them these things. When they see me out in the shelter, or they see me out and about, or when we're role playing, they like, oh, yo, that's real. That's legit how she is.
No, that's real. What now? You were earlier you were about to mention the PhD program and just like how you've grown in this program.
Yeah, it's amazing how much this program has made me think about things. Like, I've always been pretty conscious about social justice things. Like, I think that's partly your fault, partly your fault. But I think this program has given me a sense of like, look what you can do. I don't know how, but like, it was like interesting being at a place where I was working before, where I was like, yeah, we're doing some good work, but like, you're not doing enough. You're coming in and saying, this is what we want to provide to the communities of asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then getting in school, and one of the first projects I had to do was about teaching program evaluation. It's like, oh, that's what my program should have been doing. They should have been evaluating what the community actually needs, and so just giving it to them. It made me think about stuff like that. It made me think about like cultural competence and how like it's lacking in so many different areas. Right? It's made me think about what kind of teacher, because like the program I'm in is counselor education. How mine is set up, it's geared towards making me a better clinician, a better teacher. Well, a teacher in general, I don't teach. A teacher, to be an advocate and do leadership work, as well as doing research and being a supervisor. I know it's 5 of them, being a supervisor. So I've had to think about what kind of teacher I want to be, what kind of information do I want to share, what kind of space do I want to create for the students, right? And then what kind of space do I want to create for my supervisees? What kind of space do I want to create for the people that I serve? It's really made me think about what has been working in the system and in my life and what hasn't been working and how I can make changes, how I can show up. So like it made me more confident and this unknowingly verbose person that's here, because it's like if we're advocating for Black women to show up, then I need to show up. I need to show up for myself in order to do that, for have other people do that as well. If I feel like the system that I'm working in is not working, how do I make changes in that system? How do I step up and put myself into a leadership position in order to do that? You know, I volunteered to look at policies at my job. I've given it great ideas and make some amendments and how to change the program a little bit. Being in charge of our LGBTQ program, I'm in charge of like the groups that we run, connecting with other agencies, helping the individuals in our shelter get the services and outside agencies, training our employees, and creating an inclusive space for the people that live there as well. I'm in charge of that, right? So I'm in a leadership position, and it's interesting. It's like, oh, interesting. Even for a while, I realized that during the pandemic, I hate this double pandemic thing, like, oh, racism, bitch, that shit been around for a long time. Don't do this double pandemic bullshit. Not with that. But I curse a lot too. But even during that, I actually even created a online support group for Black mental health professionals. Kind of got a little tired, so I kind of discontinued that because the semester that came out was really kicking me in the butt. But I created an online space for us to show up for each other and have a sense of support. I actually had someone I met, and she was out in one of those Koreas. I always forget which one is safe and one's not. But I think it's one of those Koreas. She's out there, and I helped support her to kind of,
I was like, it's either north or south, 50-50.
One of the Koreas.
Terrible.
But I encourage her to get back into doing her own practice and reaching out to people. So like, I've created that space as well for Black mental health people to show up, because we also need that support, right? We also need a safe space for us. The papers that I write, I love how, back in undergrad and even to extent master's level, it's like, here's your topic, write a paper about the color of the sky, right? In this program, it's like, here's a topic, here's an idea, here's the title of this class, write a paper. Mm-hmm. Figure it the fuck out, right? And it's like I'm actually allowed to do work that I really want to do. So I've written like a paper on like how it was the ethical course. I wrote a paper about how in the border they actually were accessing the confidential client notes from counseling sessions and using that against the minors and the adults who were in detention facilities and having them be deported back. Ethical issue. So I wrote a paper about that. That was actually really interesting, researching and learning more about that.
Nowhere to turn, like, jeez.
The people who are here to help you are inadvertently harming you. Trauma, like out the wazoo, the ethical issues. Of course, this is all Trump. Like I actually did the research on this. So I'm not just spouting, like, I didn't watch a YouTube video. I actually did like learn through the government procedures and stuff. Right. And this actually was under Trump, where he loosened up some of the guidelines and allowed that to take place. Mm-hmm. Because it's only, basically, you're only considered to have protection in this country if you're a legal resident or if you're a citizen or something like that. So other than that, they really do not care about you. Yeah, they don't.
Our laws don't even benefit you.
They don't. Unless you really are providing back to the society, even still, then it's even less for you. How can you provide back and get a job and pay taxes if you're not even allowed to leave the facility and get work, right? I can go on a little soapbox. I'm not going to. again, I did the actual research on this. I wrote another paper more recently about cultural mistrust in the Black community and like how that's impacting our ability to connect with mental health professionals. Like you think about Tuskegee and all these things that happen, and it's like we don't trust you, right? You realize that like Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth due to childbirth complications in the United States in comparison to white women, because medical professionals literally believe that women, our skins are thicker, we don't experience the same level of pain, yada yada yada.
Yeah,
I was reading one article, huh?
Yeah, like Black women can take more pain. Like
Black people in general, our skins are thicker, so like we're attention seeking or drug seeking, and we say that we're actually in pain because we're lying.
and those are thoughts held by current medical school students.
Correct.
I was
reading one article, and it's literally saying that like they had similar lists of like symptoms, and they like these case studies, and showed these to medical professionals. And the only both difference was like one person was Black, one person was white. Realizing like even though the symptoms were pretty similar, the vast difference in the diagnosis that they gave them, and the Black folks kind of clustered around these handful of ones. And I was like, so you automatically assuming that a Black person have these issues, this is their diagnosis, even though that might not be the case, right? To this day, I really in my heart believe that the medical system's racism killed my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was 90. She had a mass in her lungs for about a year, but she had a cough. No one did anything to give her an inhaler. A year later, let's do an x-ray. Oh, it was a mass in her lungs. 3 months later, gone. If they looked in a year ago,
the x-ray could have been done. It's an x-ray. It's very simple.
Right. So I have my own little bias towards that, right? So these things that happen. And again, I am a learned Ph.D. almost person having these fears because of my own personal experiences. How do you challenge that? So that was a paper, culture mistrust, what we can do to shift the energy, shift that. And it really is like, it's not us. My teacher asked this question about this other paper that I wrote, and I'll talk about that in a second. And she was like, what can we do to make Black people more comfortable with the systems, like the medical system and the health professionals? I was like, make them less racist. She laughed. I was dead serious. Like, it's not that we don't trust them. It's the biases and stereotypes harm us, so we're not gauging into it. Like, it makes me upset when people are forcing this vaccine on people. I am vaccinated. I am comfortable in being vaccinated, but you can't discredit the sense of cultural mistrust and how we've been harmed and experimented and been guinea pigs for like centuries, and say, "Oh, you're exaggerating," or "This is not really a thing." Like, and one person does say,
I'm sorry, it's what you said. It's not just Tuskegee in our mind. We can go back to, oh, my grandma was in the hospital, my grandfather was in the hospital, this wasn't done. My mom didn't get to seek the type of attention she should have gotten until she moved to some major city. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Or found a Black doctor, found a Black counselor, which is also why I'm passionate about what I do, because you have this stereotypes of what this looks like, right? Soapboxy, I can go on. I'm not going to. I get really I can go on about this. But there's a reason why that I'm in this space, because of the harm that's the medical professionals, the harm that mental health due to a lack of cultural humility has caused in my community. And I don't want to adhere to that. I do my best to try to be culturally sensitive, humble, open as possible, and allow Blackness shows up. And not immediately say, oh, this is your issue, right? Because even for Black women, how we show up in depression looks very different than white women. And how do you also understand that unless you, not even are, but if you've done the work to understand Black women and check your own biases and stereotypes, right? The last paper I actually just wrote was about how multicultural education has been taught, especially more specifically in counseling programs, is actually maintaining more of the status quo of the hegemonic white patriarchal cis hetero system, and it doesn't really challenge anything or change anything. It just maintains more of the same. like, those are the things I'm allowed to explore and get like prompted and like, yeah, keep going with that, Raina. And I think that's why I love this PhD program, because it's like, we don't want you to learn what we want you to learn. We want you to learn what you're passionate about and dig deep into that and figure out what you can do about it. So that's what I've learned about these things and doing the research. And like, I can go so boxy, but I can give you a list of references when I do it. Okay. I can do it.
Have you watched Lovecraft Country at all?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Seen it? I just think
I wasn't a fan. I prefer the book personally, but you know.
Oh, you read the book, man? I haven't read the book. Now I was thinking about the
audiobooks.
Okay. Oh, audiobook.
It'll save. I'm telling you, it'll save a life. Do it.
Okay.
I read nowadays.
I was just thinking about the episode with Hippolyta, and where she's like, you know, she's named herself, right?
Yeah.
And like she's talking to George about how like he helped to make her small, right? And so just thinking about that as you're talking about being a PhD program, being able to just explore and just go and not being like limited, you know what I mean, or held back from the things you naturally want to explore and have a passion for anyway.
Yeah. And I think being able to do that have not only fueled my passion, has put me in position of actually having the education and the research to back that up. So when I talk to like the director of my agency, when I talk to other people, I can be like, well, look at all the research that I've collected about this. So it's not like, hey, here's a Black woman's opinion about things, which is still valid and needs to be heard regardless. I also have the data and the expertise to come in and say, this is what needs to be done. You know, my director of the agency just really understood, like, I think we had a meeting last week, and I was talking about how like I went to school and she asked me and I went to a little 5-prong thing. I have a feeling that they went back and looked through my resume because when I was talking with them, they referenced, oh yeah, you were so-and-so, I saw that on your resume. And like, you got like over 100 employees, you had to go back to look at my resume. You had to do that.
Right. Intentionally.
Right. Check me out, boo. Like, look at my accolades, check me out, see what the fuck I'm doing, see why I'm passionate and how I'm learned. Like, go back, check my references. All right. Like, check the receipts. All right. But yeah, it was kind of cool her doing that. It was kind of cool for them to do that, because it was like, oh, well, now I'm kind of on the radar, but also like, you know, that I'm going to do the work and I'm passionate and I'm educated and I'm educating myself and I'm planning on making change and doing this the way that it needs to be done, not how you want it to be done.
Right. Let me ask you a question. So far in your, this can be career, this can be life in general. What's one of the things you're most proud of as far as an accomplishment? However you even define accomplishment, but what's one of the things you're most proud of in your life, whether that's just like life in general or career?
Showing up. No, but like, honestly, like, it really is for me to be this confident being. Took a minute. It took trauma. It took, you know, depression, anxiety. I still suffer with anxiety, not so much, but it's still there. It took, you know, heartbreak and stumbles and obstacles. Like, I can honestly say the person who's here now is very different than the person that you met in 2006. Like, the essence is still me, but the confidence and my ability to speak up for myself and to use my voice, it's different. It's there. People tell me that I'm intimidating because I do speak so confidently. And I'm not intimidating, they're intimidated. It's a difference there.
Right. It goes back to like, what do you feel versus what actually happened? Like, yeah.
Right. And if I'm intimidating, that's the thing you need to navigate. But like, I think we are often expecting people, Black women, Black queer people to like be quiet, to mute themselves, to show up quirky or like to like do something that kind of quiets their voice. And for me just to feel confident in what I've done and how I speak. I also have a stutter. It's not as strong as it used to be, mainly because I'm more confident in what I have to say. And I think that for me, it comes up, but I'm more confident in what I have to say. I'm more sure of myself. So I think I don't talk as fast unless I'm really, really passionate. And I don't stutter as much. And I'm comfortable making weird faces and being unprofessional and being quirky and being weird and showing up, even though I'm supposed to be professional. Right? Like, so for me, showing up authentically myself is like my biggest accomplishment, I think.
No, that's real. No, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so I'm gonna ask you like some rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
What cities have you lived in? Some of these you may have answered already, but what cities have you lived in?
Philadelphia, Orlando, Miami, Oakland, no, Berkeley, San Diego, Macon, Atlanta, Philly, Rochester. Yeah.
I forgot about Cali. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what was the first job you ever had?
Working on a farm. It was like an urban garden that my grandma had, like, was managing, like the local community agency thing. Urban garden in the dirt, hands growing stuff. Like, I love gardening. So it was like pesticide free for the community, discount prices. It was great. It was fun. Yeah.
Wow. Where is this, in New York or? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Yeah, my whole family. Oh, I've made a connection. My grandmother has been working with this like community agency, like helping the community. I wonder why I'm so passionate about the community. Huh. Interesting.
Oh, you saw it. Like, this is the same grandmother you're just talking about.
This is my dad's mom. My dad's mom's in New York, and she was in charge of Northeast Block Club Alliance and gave me the job working with Grub. I forgot something Greater Rochester Urban Bounty, and it was a program for teens to work in the ground in like a garden and how to grow produce and grow healthy foods and then selling it to our community.
Wow.
Yeah. I love gardening too. So it tracks. My other grandma, the one who passed away from the lung, she actually was a social worker.
Okay. This is so this is a lineage.
It goes deeper. My uncle, my mom, it goes deeper.
Okay, so that was one of my questions too. Like, for your parents, what did they do for a living? And so we'll start there. What they do for a living?
My dad, ex-military, works for the post office. My mom, she's not working currently, but she has her master's in mental health counseling and was working in chemical dependency. In New York, it's what we call like substance abuse.
Got it. Okay. Got you. All right. So what were their hobbies?
My mom and I are into gardening. Okay. We like join over gardening. My dad's actually my dad's into gardening. And I'm into gardening. My mom is into houseplants. I'm into houseplants. This is actually the big difference. My mom is also great with DIY, like making crafts and stuff like that. She does that. And my dad, he just works. Like, he sleeps and he does his garden and he like goes to work.
Got you. I might need to ask your mom about my I think it's elephant's ear plant over here.
Yeah, and I was looking at that.
I mean, all right, you don't sound impressed.
No, it looks fine, actually. You might need to put a pebble tray underneath it and some water to increase the humidity.
Okay.
Or get a water bottle and spray it to give it some humidity.
Okay.
That's what it needs.
I'll work on that. Yeah. All right, I can do that.
I have 50 plants.
If I had space for 50 plants, I would have them. All right. So, what were your hobbies as a child? And did you play any instruments, any sports in general? What were your hobbies as a kid?
I played soccer with the boys when I was living in San Diego, because we actually had recess in San Diego. And that was my thing. I loved it. Then we moved to New York in the middle of winter, and that was done. with the white and Mexican kids in San Diego, then the black kids in New York. Black kids don't play soccer, so that was done. That was absolutely done.
Yeah.
Then later on in high school, I actually was on a robotics team, and I was on math league.
Didn't know this.
I'm a nerd.
Why are you
Like,
saying
I'm a
it?
nerd. Like, I'm really a nerd. Never learned any instruments, but that was, the hobbies I had growing up. It was like building robots, and I love being in a shop and with the hammer, and like I loved it. I still actually kind of enjoy building things.
No, my always, I don't know why I almost call him my nephew, but my youngest cousin, like he was definitely building robots in high school. Like that's what he was doing. I remember going over the house one time and he had this like his robot, it was like moving, had wheels on it, and it was like shining a light. He was pretty young to be doing this, but it was really dope. Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually a team, and we competed them. So
Oh wow.
yeah, we built robots off to do a task and like competed as a team.
That's cool. No, that's cool. So I was like, I was watching this Tyler the Creator interview like literally last night, and he was just talking about like, if you're like, he pretty much said like, if you're not nerdy about something, I'm not interested. You know what I'm saying? And so like, I'm with him on like, what are the things you're nerdy about? And so like, that's dope.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely nerdier now, and I think then, yeah.
Got you. So I was about to ask what's your zodiac sign. I know your zodiac sign. You're a Cancer.
Gang, gang.
And yes, Cancer crew. Happy birthday. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Ditto.
Yeah. Thank you. So who's been one of the most meaningful people in your life? This can be somebody on your path who helped change that path, helped you go in a certain direction. It could be family, friend, teacher, stranger, any of that.
There's only one person I've actually honestly called a big brother, and that's you.
Oh my goodness. Try not
no, but seriously, like, yeah, like I think like we've been friends for like a long time. And just being able to say that, like, seeing you progress and seeing how you supported me make better decisions, being supportive of my dumb shit, and helping me kind of navigate that and educating me, helped me really be a better person. I remember summer break and winter break, you would have me read a book and then listen to like a genre or like an artist off of that. And it helped me expand and learn more about like Black culture, what things meant. It was like extracurricular work that I had to do, and it helped me like learn more about like things that were important, learn more about the community, learn more about the history, right? So I appreciated just having those gentle guiding hands of like, hey, we could do better. This is what better looks like. And also, like, honestly, I'm not creative in the poetry way. I am creative in other ways, but also it's like cool that you had friends who weren't in that poetry sphere, but it was also welcome to have come over and have conversations and give their 2 cents and show up. Because, it's always been a big fan. So I think that's been helpful for me understanding what true friendship really look like. And then also for me, having a friend of mine meeting like my entire family is also really important. And I don't know if you remember how you were in New York and my family was there and I had them come to one of your shows.
Oh, that's right. I forgot they came to the show.
Right. Yeah. And you met my mom multiple times too. Mm-hmm. But like that to me, it says a lot because again, I had some difficult times in undergrad. So having some consistency and some support to me is meant like everything. So yeah, it's my big brother.
It's crazy. Yeah. I was showing like my partner, we were watching, I don't know if you remember this. Gabe had the camera on. He's doing like an MTV Cribs at my apartment before I left Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I think I was about to move to DC. And like you're laughing in the back. I could tell you're in the living room. I was like, that's Raina in the living room. Because like we're just doing my room. But and I think about, so for you also, like, this is very like crucial moments. So there are crucial moments in my poetry career. So there's Henry come along in 2007 and like investing like financially and investing time, right? But before that, like, keep in mind, my family's back in Arkansas. So in Georgia, like, me and Brandon are close friends, right? And still are. But at the time, like, you were really helping with promoting, you know what I'm saying? Like, getting the word out. Remember, like, the Harlem 65, even being away from campus. Like, I'm in Philly, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're helping like organize getting these people to do pictures for the Harlem 65 promo, chat books, right? And it's
I
just
remember
like,
that. Yeah.
yeah, because this is a very scary time. I just left grad school. I don't know what's about to happen in my life. You know what I'm saying? And like, you were very supportive throughout this time. You know what I'm saying? From like my last like year or two at Mercer up until like, like being out of grad school that year. There's a very like there are about 3 years of my life that are very like turbulent. Not turbulent as bad things happening, but like, oh, what we doing? Oh, what's happening here? And so like, that's the time I really like just always like treasure. And I don't know if you know this, but I have a stepsister. Like, I have a sister that we share the same father. We have the same father.
I think that sounds familiar, actually.
So what happens right before my 12th grade year in high school, I meet my sister for the first time. But I'm leaving. I'm going to Georgia. And so I don't even get to be around her. I don't even get to be a big brother to her. And still haven't. I've never spent a whole lot of time with her. And we'll talk on the phone. We'll talk Facebook like that, every now and then. But like, so I was like, and I always wanted a little sister. And so by the time like you're around, like, and you were like, I'm like this too. If you're a person that like I'm talking to, because keep in mind, I'm not the like, oh, I'm gonna teach you something person. I'm the like, yo, I'm about to have a conversation with you. I'm just talking to you about picking your brain, see what you feel about it. This is how I'm thinking about it. I don't even know if I'm thinking about it the right way. Like, what do you think about this? So like, that's really like more like my vibe, like whether it's a book, whether it's an album or something like that. You know what I mean? Oh, you like this? Okay. Like, oh, what do you like about this? Like, you know what I mean? Type thing. And so by the time like I meet you, I can see that you're taking it in, right? And so it was like a circle for me. Like, at this time around, I'm talking to Brandon a lot, my friend O'Kenna as well, like soaking in information. And I'm in a circle of people for the first time that like my close friends are like, I can go like deep into subjects with them and have time that's not interrupted by parents, right? Because I have very close friends in high school, but it depends on like, are our parents going to allow us to meet up and all this stuff? And so like that time in school, and I'm leaving school, and like, you have to understand too, I have a whole new set of friends. All my friends just graduated on time, you know what I'm saying, in like 2007. And so it's a very much time for me that like, in a certain sense, it was lonely. So I had a set of friends that graduated, and I had a set of friends who just left school and they realized it wasn't for them. You know what I'm saying? And we ended up meeting through Jermaine, who was my best friend at the time. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know what happened to him.
And Jermaine graduates on time too. So like, he's gone. You know what I mean? Or like, he graduates before me. And so like, that was a very like uncertain time. And so I think about it a lot. I remember like little things like Pendleton Hall, I think. In Pendleton, this is where I had my English classes and all that. So there was Wilmington Hall, I think.
Yeah, that sounds more familiar.
Wilmington, and you were doing video. I remember like I had this like you were recording. I still have this footage. You recorded me performing in like Wilmington Hall, and this is 2006, 2007. So we don't have iPhones. Well, we may, but it's not like cell phones.
We didn't have iPhones. I had a Verizon, and I had an iPod, which still no longer exists. So yeah, I remember that.
So like, there's like the early footage from like there's footage like from 2 events in high school, but then some of the first footage in college really is then, and this is my transition into adult poet, leaving college and all of that. And so that was a very particular time in my life that like I'll always cherish. And so it's mutual, to say the least.
Yeah, and I love how like even over time you still kind of pop up. You remember that trip to in Harlem, in New York City? Remember that time I came to Philly and lost my wallet? We still had a freaking blast regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was that Halloween. And you met
yeah.
Justin Graham. Um
Black Rangers matter.
what's that? Which day?
Was it Black Rangers matter? Remember we
Oh,
were
that was
screaming
a whole
that?
thing. Oh yeah, like that was crazy. That was a whole thing. That was
Whole
crazy.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Another particular time, right? There's a because Justin Graham, I don't get to spend a whole lot of time with him. There's like maybe like there's a year or two, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
like you met Justin Graham. I actually just interviewed Jalila. I think Jalila met Justin Graham as well. And so it's crazy. Like there are these like moments in time that are like just like I don't know, captured. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I actually do remember you shared a picture recently, and I was just like, hmm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And social media is weird. I definitely will like just randomly share a video or picture of Justin without like any announcement. It's just like here. I mean, I think about him all the time. Like it's kind of like that's kind of how it happens in my head. Like it's just, oh, I remember Justin told me this, or Justin said this, or I saw him do this, whatever.
He was pretty dope. Like he was pretty dope. And I think like it's interesting how we have like this sibling relationship, brother sister relationship, and it's like for me, I disappear really easy. I get sucked into my own thing, but I think I've always kind of be you in that way, and always will, of course. And it's like I've learned so much, even though you weren't trying to, right? Like I still have like external hard drive of like almost every song I've downloaded from you and copied from your CDs. And like that's like those things are impactful. Like I remember, and I still can't remember exactly what it's called, but going to one of your poetry workshops, or you went to one and learning about this poetry form, and still trying to recreate that. But I'm definitely going to recreate that when I do group and when I do individual sessions, because it's like the power of words and language and just how we speak. So I like those moments are just everything.
You came to Modern Lit, but it might not have been called Modern Lit at the time. It would have been called the Mission Statement, whatever workshop. But this
That
is
sounds familiar, actually.
the Mission Statement. This is a group that Kerwin Sutherland started. Did the first interview for Branch Normal, and you came to that one of those poetry workshops. I remember that.
That was dope.
Like 2 days, like that Halloween and Justin and the Black Ranger in the workshop, like, whew, moving. So, all right. So, speaking of Justin Graham, this is a question he would appreciate. If you could throw a music festival, any genre of artists dead or alive, who would be the top 3 acts at which?
So I would do a music festival honoring the African diaspora, right? So I would do, and this sounds wild, right? This sounds absolutely wild. I would probably do Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay.
I would do, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I would do, what's that Asian group? The K-pop one. BTK.
BTS?
Right? BTK.
BTK? I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's like an Asian, like Korean, like pop group, K-pop.
Yeah. I've seen them perform.
Yeah. And I would do I think I would do Kendrick Lamar. And I know that's very crazy, but realizing that Black music has encompassed the globe and shown up in a lot of different ways. So like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like even the instruments in which people use, right, come from Africa. So that's why I would
guitar,
percussions, like that's why I said like I would do that with that title, because Blackness shows up in very different ways. We love K-pop. I know I definitely get into a little J-pop. I'm getting into it. Definitely love a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Definitely on my bucket list still. I love Kendrick. Saw him in concert, and so this is a variety of ways that we can honor music and still be Black people, also how Blackness has influenced music over time. So yeah,
because Red Hot Chili Peppers, George Clinton produced I think most of their second album, Freaky Styley. K-pop, a lot of K-pop artists have admitted to like, no, like we're remaking the 90s R&B film.
Yes. Yes. Like if you listen to it, it's like, this sounds like Blackstreet.
Right. Exactly. All right. So like I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything you want to leave us with before we get out of here?
This was fun. I think it was fun because I remember listening to you, right? Chiming in a little bit, but just listening. And I think it's interesting how it's flipped so much. So I'm just like, nah, and these are my thoughts, and this is what I've done. And like just all me like being the one who's more vocal and being in the conversation, and you're just listening to me. And it's interesting how this has flipped, and again, how like your support has helped me get to like this place and be more confident and secure in myself. And I know that some people may not like it, but like tough titty, right? So I guess the two things to leave, it's remember 478 breathe, right? That's if you can't remember one thing. And don't forget to take up space. Show up how you need to show up, and if people can't deal with it, that's their problem. I know I understand that like who I am means I'm going to be fighting in the future. I'm fully aware of the fights that I have ahead of me, just for me to show up authentically myself and be okay with that. But that's a fight I'm willing to have. So like be as authentic as you can, as much as you can, and find safe spaces for you to be able to show up as well as you can. And counseling, go to counseling. You can, if you're in Florida, you can reach out to me, right? If you're not in Florida, still reach out, and I can give you the list of resources or registries for other clinicians of color in various ways. And you can talk with them about sliding fee scales, whatever, in order to make sure you're getting the care that you need. And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Raina, for being a part of the Branch Normal Collection. I really appreciate it.
It means a lot to me. It truly does.